I was the only human on the Galactic Council's translation staff, 11 languages, 419 sessions a year, and a booth on the second tier of the Grand Assembly Chamber with a clear sightline to the registrar's podium. That fact, the human part, hadn't mattered in 11 years. I translated trade amendments, biosecurity clauses, atmospheric mineral import tariffs on worlds I would never visit. The kind of work that doesn't make history and doesn't ruin your sleep. Then they scheduled the Compliance Accord ratification, and Ambassador Nara Vasic arrived with a delegation of 4, and everything I thought I understood about silence came apart in a single session. The Compliance Accord was, on paper, an administrative instrument. Every species seated on the Council would be assigned a universal designation, a numerical string that replaced sovereign identifiers in all official documentation, trade filings, fleet registrations, and cultural archives. The Council had been phasing it in for 2 decades. 143 species had ratified without incident. Humanity was the last holdout, and nobody on the quorum floor seemed to regard that as anything more than a scheduling delay. I was assigned to the human delegation's booth that morning. Standard protocol, live relay of floor debate, whispered summaries of procedural nuance the ambassador might miss, a quiet word when the voting calculus shifted beneath the rhetoric. I'd done it for dozens of species. It was a good day's work. I expected it to last about 3 hours. Ambassador Vasic sat down at 0814. She set a leather folio on the table, aligned it with the edge, and folded her hands over it. She did not open it. Registrar Toavan, a Dothuri, tall, gray-skinned, meticulous in the way all Dothuri are meticulous, as though imprecision were a physical discomfort, opened the session at 0820 with a formal reading of the designation terms. Universal Designation 4-71 had been assigned to Earth Species File. Ratification required a single authorized signature on the console document already loaded at the ambassador's station. I leaned toward Vasic and began translating. She raised one finger, just slightly, just enough, and I stopped. "I speak Dothuri," she said, quietly. "To me, not to the chamber." Those were the last words I heard her say for the rest of the day. The registrar finished the reading at 0847. The chamber turned to the human booth. Vasic sat with her hands on the closed folio, her expression as neutral as the seal stamped on the desk in front of her. She did not touch the console. She did not ask for a recess. She did not request clarification or signal dissent. Toavan waited. 40 seconds is a long time in a council chamber. I know, because I counted every one of them. "Ambassador," Toavan said, "the terms have been read in full. You may now ratify." Vasic did not move. I want to be precise about what happened next, because the official transcript smoothed it into procedural language that lost the texture entirely. Toavan looked at me. I understood the look. He wanted me to prompt her, to repeat the terms in a softer register, to do my job, which was to bridge whatever gap had opened between the registrar's voice and the ambassador's silence. I opened my mouth. Vasic's hand moved. Not toward me, not toward the console. She adjusted the folio by a 1/4 inch and settled her hands again. I closed my mouth. The senior delegate from the Vathi hegemony leaned into his alcove microphone. "Is there a translation difficulty?" "No," I said. The ambassador understood the terms. "Then why hasn't she signed?" I had no answer for that. Neither did anyone else in the chamber. The session continued. The council moved to secondary business. Atmospheric tariffs, transit lane width adjustments. The kind of filler they schedule when the main agenda is expected to resolve quickly. But the rhythm of the chamber had shifted. Conversations were shorter. Pauses between agenda items ran a few seconds longer than protocol required. Every few minutes, a delegate or an aide would glance at the human booth. Some looked away quickly when they saw the same picture they'd seen 10 minutes before. Vasic sat. The folio stayed closed. The console screen glowed untouched. At 10:30, the presiding quorum called a formal recess. Delegates filed toward the East Gallery. Aides murmured in tight clusters near the pillar bays, their voices carrying the particular pitch that means the day is not going as briefed. Two Arathi clerks stopped at the edge of the human booth, looked at Vasek, and moved on without speaking. I stood to stretch and looked down at Vasek, who had not stood. "Ambassador," I said, carefully, "may I bring you anything?" She looked at me. It wasn't cold, it wasn't hostile. It was the look of someone who had already decided everything she intended to do and had no need to explain any of it, least of all to the person whose entire job was to find words where they were needed. "No," she said. "Thank you." The session resumed at 11:15. Tuavan opened with a direct address. The Council recognizes that species designation ratification is a sovereign act. However, the Compliance Accord is now in its 22nd year of implementation. Earth remains the sole unceded signatory. The Council respectfully asks Ambassador Vasek to confirm her delegation's intent. The chamber waited. Vasek sat. I sat beside her and did not translate a single syllable, because there was nothing to translate and we both knew it. At 11:40, a junior delegate from the Arathi Compact, young, impatient, the kind who believes volume corrects all misunderstanding, stood and addressed the booth directly. "With respect, Ambassador, is your silence a negotiating posture? If Earth has amendments to propose, the Council will hear them. If there are grievances, the standard arbitration channels remain open. But silence is not a recognized procedural instrument under the Accord framework." I turned to Vasek. She hadn't moved. Her eyes were on the junior delegate, steady, unhurried, with an expression I can only describe as the look you give weather. Not hostile, not dismissive, simply aware of it and unwilling to argue with it. The junior delegate sat down. No one else stood. By 1300, the afternoon session block was overdue. Tuavan conferred with the quorum leadership in a side chamber. I could hear fragments through the partition wall. Unprecedented. No mechanism for compulsion. The optics, if we... They returned at 13:15. Tuavan's voice was flatter now. The meticulous Dothuri cadence had thinned into something closer to recitation, as though formality were the only structure still holding. The presiding quorum has reviewed its authority under Section 11 of the Compliance Accord. Non-ratification within the designated session window will be recorded as voluntary forfeiture of the Species Council seat, associated trade privileges, and all diplomatic protections extended under Council Charter. This is not a sanction. It is the automatic consequence of non-ratification, as agreed by the founding signatories. Ambassador Vasek, ratify, or Earth forfeits its seat. I turned to the ambassador's chair. The folio was gone. The console screen was dark. The chair was empty. I don't know when she left. I don't know if anyone saw her stand. The chamber's access system logged her badge exiting the east corridor at 12:47, 28 minutes before the ultimatum was read. She hadn't waited for it. She had heard everything she needed to hear long before it was said. The chamber didn't erupt. That's the part no one outside the building understood afterward. There was no shouting, no scrambling for comms, no dramatic pivot. A Vathi aide checked the booth feed, confirmed the badge log, and said something quiet to the senior delegate. The information moved through the tiers in murmurs. Not alarm, something worse. The delegates looked at the empty chair, the way you look at a crack in the foundation of a building you were told was solid. Not with panic, with the slow, nauseating weight of reassessment. Tuavan stood at the registrar's podium for a long time. His hands were flat on the surface. I stayed in the translator's booth. No one dismissed me. No one asked me to leave. For the first time in 11 years, I had no function in that room, and no one had the composure to notice. The following morning, the Council's administrative office received a formal communication from Earth's Bureau of External Affairs. It was 3 lines. It thanked the Council for its courtesy. It confirmed that Earth's withdrawal from all Council-administered treaties, trade frameworks, and mutual defense accords had been filed with the Secretariat 6 hours before the ratification session convened, and it wished the compliance accord continued success in its implementation. There was no fourth line. I translated the note into 11 languages for the official record. It was the shortest piece of work I ever produced for that institution, and the one the quorum requested to review most often in the years that followed. I served in that building for another 9 years. I translated threats, pleas, capitulations, bluffs, territorial grievances, and more trade amendments than I care to remember. In all that time, no registrar ever read Designation 4-71 aloud again. No delegate proposed reopening the ratification. It stayed in the system, a number assigned to a species that had never acknowledged it and was no longer in the room to hear it. Some silences don't need a translator. That was the thing I never found a way to put into any of the 11 languages I spoke. Some silences are the translation.